I'm James Rule. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, where we help existing and aspiring leaders find clarity, build resilience, drive performance, and enhance fulfillment. Welcome to the Lonely Leader. I'm James Rule, and today we're going to be talking about holiday illness, a warning sign that you simply cannot ignore. Now, the last episode we produced on the Lonely Leader podcast was all about the need and the benefits for taking a digital detox. And it's been amazing to see the feedback and the communication that episode has generated within our community. And for me, it highlights a need to explore why it's so important. It's all about restoring our energy and enhancing our ability to not just get to a high performing level, but to sustain it over the long term. Those of you that have worked with me and listened to multiple episodes of the podcast will be tired of me talking about that analogy, but any one of us can get to a high performance level. But the danger is if we push ourselves too hard in the short term to get to that level, then we come crashing down again. Our aspiration has to be to get to a level and be able to sustain it over the long term without damaging ourselves physically or mentally. So holiday illness needs no introduction, but I'll give it one nonetheless. It's that simple premise. You push hard, you clear the desk, you empty the inbox, you try and get everything done, you go away with your friends, with your partner, with your family, and then whack, something hits you. A cold, flu, stomach upset, call it what you will, but it disrupts your ability to truly enjoy your holiday or your vacation. Now, it's interesting because when I work with groups or individuals, I'll often touch on this subject, and I would say consistently at least 3/4 of everybody that I work with in a group dynamic or individually reports having experienced holiday illness. Now, it's not just an inconvenience for me, it's a red flag. It's a warning sign that something needs to change. So this episode is about me explain a little bit more about what's happening to your body when you have these bouts of holiday illness, why it's so critical that we don't just ignore it, shrug our shoulders, as I did for many, many years, and what we can do to try and minimize its occurrence. And one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this, again, forgive me for those of you that have heard this story, but a pivotal changing point in my career and indeed my whole life was coming back from a bout of holiday illness, traveling with my wife and daughters. And on the day after I got back, I collapsed in my family bathroom with pneumonia. That put me in hospital. It gave me a 2-week period where I was forced to be signed off work. I wasn't allowed access to my phone. And it forced me to reflect on, how did I get here? As a healthy, young chief executive, how have I found myself in a hospital struggling with a viral infection like pneumonia, which in my mind only ever bothered old people? And the reason I got there was refusing to consider the need for recovery and how I was managing my energy and my daily output. And so having gone down that path, I had to get to that critical enough is enough moment. And it's my moral obligation to share that story as an incentivizer for people to think, hang on, I've got some of these warning signs. I'm experiencing holiday illness. Perhaps I need to course correct a little bit to avoid that worst case scenario. So let's just briefly explore a little bit of the science behind holiday illness. So when we're in that high intensity, stressful day-to-day environment, we're in fight or flight mode. And that leads to an elevated level of our stress hormone, cortisol. Now, cortisol is part of our essential survival toolkit. It keeps inflammation at bay. It does things to our body to allow us to keep moving forward, to stay in fight mode. What I've learned as I try to study this phenomenon and study what cortisol is doing is that it's not meant to be at high levels over a sustained period. It's meant to be a short-term spike to help us survive. Going back to that fight or flight response, there's a tiger outside the cave. There's a threat to life. We're pumped full of cortisol. adrenaline, etc., and we can avoid that threat. But for many executives, for many high performers, we allow ourselves to get into that sort of continual state of stress. So that cortisol is constantly pumping through our system, and that actually weakens our immune system. Naturally, there'll be scientists out there that'll do a far better job of explaining this, but I think from a layman's term, it's important we understand the simplicity of this. So the cortisol is almost propping up our immune system. The immune system is weakened, and then when we stop, we finally take that vacation, we step away from the working environment, the stress is temporarily removed, so the cortisol levels plummet, but our immune system that's been weakened struggles to adapt. It doesn't adapt quickly enough, and those pathogens that we've been holding off, they take hold, that illness takes hold, and as a consequence, we find ourselves struggling with holiday illness. So, yep, the science makes sense, James, I hear you say, but what am I going to do about that? Well, I think understanding it is the first step. And I'm sure many of you will be listening and nodding, going, yeah, I feel I'm pretty much in that continual loop of stress. I can understand now why that cortisol is pumping around my system continually. I recognize that's not a healthy place to be long term. So I need to think about some key steps that I can take to be able to reduce that. And it's interesting when we look at high performers in the public eye, you will find them embracing some of these steps. You will find them endorsing it. And I'll share a couple of them as we work through the podcast. The first tip I want to share is micro recover every day. One of the objections I hear as a high performance coach is I do not have time. It underpins so many barriers that people are allowing themselves to put in front of their own growth and development. That might be a barrier to learning a new skill. It might be a barrier to committing to health and fitness. It could be a barrier in this case to finding time to build any sort of recovery into our day-to-day. But we've got to find the time. Now, that's easy to say, but it doesn't always change people's habits. And if we are exhibiting holiday illness, we know that whatever we are doing is not 100% right because our body is screaming at us, you're not recovering properly, you're not restoring your energy, and as a consequence, this is why we're breaking down when we're on vacation. So rather than say you must find time for huge structured recovery plans, let's start small. Let's start with micro recovery, short breaks. Get away from your desk. Step one. Walk around the office, your home. Move up and down the stairs a little bit. Just stretch, move, go and get a drink. And step that up to perhaps a short walk around the exterior of the office building, or there may be a park nearby or somewhere you can just take some fresh air and take a couple of short 10-minute walks here and there. It doesn't have to be hugely onerous. It doesn't have to be big hour-long blocks, but just take some mini breaks. I also encourage you to just think about stopping and taking a few deep breaths. If you can step out in nature and just spend literally 2 or 3 minutes taking some deep breaths, it has an impact on reducing some of those cortisol stress hormones. My second tip is decompress before the break. I've been there. We're all guilty of this. We go at 100 miles an hour till the very night before we leave, and then we stop. And it's that extreme intensity followed by a complete shutdown that often shocks the body into this holiday illness. So easier said than done, but try and not leave things till the last minute. Try and clear some of that work to allow you just to taper off a bit more gradually and not have to pull 2 or 3 late nights, long days of high intensity work just to try and clear the desk. So we're going back to some of the tips from the previous episode on digital detox. And if you haven't heard that, there'll be a link in the show notes. But who can you delegate to? What can you do in advance to allow it to be a less extreme page turn from day before I leave to the first day of my vacation? Tip number 3, protect your immune system. A drop the mic moment, no doubt, but if we don't invest in our immune system throughout the year, then how can we expect it to be there for us in those pivotal moments, such as when we take a holiday and we try and prevent ourselves succumbing to holiday illness. So, how we sleep, what we eat, trying to build in those micro recovery elements we've talked about earlier, and also more consistent forms of physical exercise all feed into enhancing and maintaining a vibrant immune system. And that's got to be a critical priority for each and every one of us. Tip number 4, manage expectations. There's very much a dotted line into the preparation for the digital detox, but this is the same sort of principles. People have to understand that you are taking a break, that you will not be contactable. And that helps remove a lot of mental baggage and stress, because you start to have that wrestle. Oh, I'm going away with my partner. I'm going away with my family. They want me to be present, but I know I've got this project. Oh, what if I get calls? What if I get emails? What if it disrupts my time with them? If you can manage expectations and say, I'm only going away for a few days here, I empower you and I trust you to make decisions. Only in that nuclear situation do I need to be contacted. Then it removes that fear of, I'm going to get disrupted. Because the worst thing you can do is to end up between the two stools. You're not fully present at work because you're away, but you're not fully present with your loved ones because you're thinking at work and you're trying to bridge the two gaps. Take that time. Give yourself permission to take a quality period of rest and recovery. You will come back 10 times better as a leader and have a higher level of professional performance. So everybody wins. Your relationships are invested in, and you are going to deliver to a higher level at work. Tip number 5 is create a shutdown ritual. Now, this is a big subject that we could take the whole podcast upon, but it's not just about holiday illness prevention. I think this works without a doubt prior to going away, but equally I encourage clients to think about this at the end of a working week, and indeed at the end of a working day. How can you close the loop on certain elements of stress? It could be as simple as just looking at that to-do list, prioritizing what still needs to be done the following day or the following week, being ruthless with yourself to say, I can't get all of these things done, so which are the top priorities? Look at the calendar. Many of you have heard me talk about my power hour concept. Which of those tasks are going to slot into the power hours? And away we go. The shutdown ritual could also be some degree of movement or exercise prior to jumping in the car or starting the commute. There are lots of ways we can do this, but the principle I would encourage you to reflect on is, how do I wind down at the end of a day, the end of a week, and prior to going on a holiday? Tip number 6 is be mindful about stress. You need to recognize when you are getting trapped in that high stress loop. There's no judgment here, because I was guilty of this. You push forward, you attack the next task, the next meeting, the next call, you work relentlessly, and you become almost blind to the fact that you're pushing yourself so hard and that your body is stressed. My illustration, as I articulated earlier, is collapsing with pneumonia. It was a surprise and a frustration to myself when I found myself in that position, particularly as it stopped me executing my professional role for a week or two. But actually, with the benefit of hindsight, I was almost embarrassed. I was certainly frustrated at myself in the initial instance to say, this is no surprise. Now that I actually step off the proverbial hamster wheel and look at how I was operating, limited focus on exercise, limited focus on the right amount of sleep, nutrition being compromised, I looked at that and thought, it's no wonder the body put up a reaction and said, hang on, we need to change something. So I encourage you to reflect. That might be as simple as just having a scoring mechanism. At the end of the week, as part of that shutdown ritual, you give yourself a score out of 10 on the level of stress that that week has generated. Some weeks will be more intense than others, but if that score is consistently at a high level, then we need to be reflecting on these steps. We need to be reflecting on, how can I bring that stress level down? And feeding perfectly into that is tip number 7, trickle release stress, don't bottle it. Many of us are guilty of just pushing feelings and stress to one side and saying, I'll punch on, I'll keep pressing forward. Now, in the short term, that is fine. We often need to push through a period of adversity, a specific challenge. I'm not saying that every time a high stress moment occurs, we all take time to recover, reflect, and step away. But we know the difference here. We know when we're out of balance. We know when we're just going from one high stress situation to the next. And rather than wait for our body to fight back and give us these bouts of holiday illness, let's find ways to start, as I use the analogy, just open the valve, release some of that stress. And before it becomes detrimental to your performance, to your health, What sort of things are we talking about there? Well, you may just simply pick up a journal. You may reflect on some of your thoughts and what you can do as a consequence. Perhaps you talk to a trusted friend or a mentor. Two heads are better than one. A problem shared is a problem halved. Those adages are all there for a reason because they're true. So perhaps it's just talking to somebody. And as I've mentioned repeatedly in this, it may be just some form of movement, taking the dog out in nature, getting out on your bike, going for a walk, going for a jog, hitting the gym, doing an exercise class, whatever works for you. But there's a rebalancing of those hormones within your body. There's a reduction of that cortisol. And as I like to call it, it's that trickle release. It's almost like the pressure cooker. The pressure builds, you open that valve, it drops again, and you're capable to deal with the next challenge, and it builds, you open the valve, and it drops again. We've got to just keep opening that valve. So how can you put that into play? What is your trickle release strategy? And my final point is plan a reasonable re-entry to work. What does that mean? Well, we've all been there. You get back in day one, you feel almost a sense of guilt for being away. So you attack an inbox, there's hundreds of emails waiting, and you've got 10 back-to-back meetings, and you create a phenomenal shock to the system of welcome back. You get in your car at the end of the day and you just feel drained, like, oh, why did I even take a vacation? I'm so exhausted with this backlog. Now, there are multiple ways to attack this, but don't try and do everything on day one. Perhaps you keep all the meetings off day one, and it's very much about diving into that inbox, catching up, prioritizing, picking up the phone, or meeting people that you need to speak to as a consequence of assessing the inbox, touching base with your leadership team and your direct reports to understand the lay of the land and what's happened. And all the meetings can start from day two. Equally, I've had a number of clients actually take one day of their vacation time to have a work from home. They're not technically back at work, but it helps them just understand what's in their inbox, work through it at a more leisurely pace prior to their first day back in the office. Now, you might say, I'm not taking one of my holidays to do that. I accept that. But the principle here is I've been there. I see it all too often in clients of step back in and do one of the most intense days you've ever done in an attempt to catch up. You might think that's the moral way to go and it's a professional necessity, but not if then the rest of the week's almost a write-off because you've pushed yourself so hard on day one. You need bandwidth. You need an ability to concentrate. Clearing your inbox is not the objective. We all have this deluded notion of let's get the inbox emptied. Actually, why? Because the second you do it, and we've all been there, it'll start filling up again. You might get a matter of minutes before the next wave of email comes in. And I guarantee if you've been clearing your inbox, you've been sending outward bound messages, people start responding. So the objective's not really to clear it, it's to be able to understand what's in it, skim through it, and give the best of your energy and your insight to the responses you make. That's the objective, to make interjections, suggestions, feedback of a high caliber and a high quality, not just let's get this off the plate as quick as I can, rush, respond, right, good, I've got a clear inbox. That's a bit of a deluded mindset for me. So think about that first day back in. So I hope these reflections give you food for thought. You're tired of me saying it on this platform. There is no judgment from me. I've been there. I've succumbed to holiday illness. I succumbed to it multiple times as well. I was a bit of a world-class expert. Whenever we committed to a family vacation, Christmas, summer, Easter, it didn't matter. This happened. And it just became a sort of, well, that's just the way it is. And that was naivety and ignorance, which I don't want you to succumb to. It's not the way it is. I am not advocating that you don't work hard. I'm not advocating that you don't have ambition and work at the highest level of performance. What I'm advocating is do it sustainably. Don't ignore the warning signs. Become more conscious and aware of the stress levels in your body and take steps to manage that trickle release of stress. Take steps to manage your immunity. Help build the defenses to allow you to avoid these reactions that say, my body's not in the right place. There is no reason why you can't have your body and mind in the right place and perform at the highest possible level. My whole raison d'etre at The Lonely Leader is a holistic overview for high performance. I want deep levels of fulfillment in your professional life and your personal life. But if work becomes a way that you damage your physical and mental health, then not only does your work and the quality of your output there suffer, but so does everything in your personal life, your relationships, your ability to connect and be the person people need you to be in that wider friendship and extended family group. So this is the ultimate win-win. And I encourage you all to reflect on how you can prevent holiday illness and how, as a byproduct, you set yourselves up for sustained and healthy high performance over the long term. Good luck with it all. Thanks for listening to the Lonely Leader podcast. I'd be very grateful if you could share and follow if the content resonates. And if you're looking for additional free resource to support your continued growth and development, then please do check out our social media and website details in the show notes. Remember, quality leadership on the outside must always start within.